Screw it. I can't do it as good as him. It's just an uncopyable creeper stare. Welcome back everyone to another classic movie review. Geez, last time I did one was for Space Jam. That was in July, so like 6 months ago now. Yeah, like I said, I do want to keep most of my reviews to be new releases, but every so often I do want to do something like this. So now I'm here to talk about Clockwork Orange. This film was released in 1972. That's when it had its United States release, but it technically was actually released in December of 71 in New York City. Various internet articles will say 1971, so I mean, I guess technically it's that year. Basically, this movie came out about 50 years ago now. It was directed by the legendary director, one of my personal favorite directors, Stanley Kubrick, based off the 1962 novel of the same name written by Anthony Burgess. And has anyone by chance read that book? I'm very curious to actually read that. Let me know if you have and what you think of it. Now, this film revolves around the character of Alex, played by Malcolm McDowell, and he is this leader of this gang. They call themselves the Droogs. And with them being a gang, you know, they do a lot of bad things. They commit lots of violence. They commit rape. They steal things. And the movie really is, the way I view it at least, separated into 3 different acts and 3 really movements in the film. And also potential spoilers for this movie if you haven't seen it. The first act being where we see Alex just living his normal life, being a part of this gang and doing the things that they do, but also his at-home life and what he does outside of the Droogs. The second act really being where he kind of has to pay the price for everything that he's done. He goes to this institution where they torture him, they try to sort of rehabilitate him in a way. But it really is sort of a form of therapy. They're trying to help him. They're not really trying to harm him in any way. They're trying to just make him a better, more decent person. And then the third act, which is my personal favorite act, is when he goes back to his normal life, being a changed man and having gone through what he did at this institution, well, really more like a prison at the start. And he sees how much the world has changed and how much the people around him have changed and have moved on from his past. And in my opinion, Alex DeLarge, who was played by Malcolm McDowell, is one of the best characters in any of Stanley Kubrick's movies that we ever got. And Malcolm McDowell is so brilliant as this character. His performance is just out of this world good. He does such a good job of being so like dislikable and distasteful in the first act, but then you really do kind of start to feel bad for him, seeing what he's going through at this institution, and then witnessing him being somewhat of an outcast when he goes back to the real world in the third act. I mean, he's a very sympathetic character, which is very impressive because, I mean, he's an absolute douchebag in the first act. I mean, he's just a terrible person. He does all these terrible things, and then somehow the film makes you feel bad for him, really, in the second and third acts. And I think a lot of that is attributed to Malcolm's excellent performance. However, I don't want to take away from the other actors in this movie. Everyone always talks about Malcolm McDowell, and he is great. But I do think that there are some other performances in this cast that are pretty overlooked. Michael Bates plays the chief guard at the prison that Malcolm is sent to. And I mean, he is just extremely over the top in this movie. He's always yelling, always very overblown in his acting. And in a way, I can almost see this as a predecessor to the drill sergeant in Full Metal Jacket, played by Lee Ermey. I can definitely see some of this character's personality and his traits being an influence to the writing of that character. He's really good, but I really think that probably the best performance other than Malcolm McDowell is Patrick McGee as the character of Frank. And it really is when we go back to his character in the third act and when he recognizes Alex and recognizes a past encounter that he had with him, obviously in the opening when him and the Droogs go and they rape his wife. And he does such a good job at selling just that anger and that like desperation to just destroy Alex. And that shot where he hears Alex sing in the rain when he's in the bathtub, and that shot when he's at the door is flawless acting. And it's also very similar to when Jack in The Shining is at that door in the pantry of the hotel, and you know, it's this shot right here, I'll show it here. It's pretty similar to that one. I kind of realized that when I was rewatching this movie this time. And knowing how much of a perfectionist Kubrick was, he probably made this poor man do the shot, like, I don't know, 50, 60 times. Yeah, for those of you who aren't aware, Stanley Kubrick was such an extreme perfectionist that he would not stop until he got the shot the right way he wanted it to be, until it was perfect in his mind. He would keep going. And it goes without saying, but Stanley Kubrick's direction in this movie is just off the charts good. You know, it does kind of sadden me that he only got one Oscar, is for Best Visual Effects for 2001 Space Odyssey. Definitely worthy of winning that, but he never won any other ones, never won Best Director in his life. And with this movie especially, I don't see why he didn't ever win. I mean, the man literally threw his camera out the window. The score in this movie, like with a lot of Kubrick's other movies, do utilize these very classical arrangements that we have all heard, like Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, for example. But there are also aspects to some of the score, especially with the main theme for the movie, that utilizes these very interesting and futuristic sounds. I don't even know what the hell kinds of instruments these are. It sounds awesome though, and I think it really does add to the movie's very dystopic nature and atmosphere that it really reeks of. And another thing I have to mention with this movie, I mean, you can't talk about this film without mentioning just how good the narration is. And narrations in movies often feel just very tacked on and unnecessary, but I mean, this movie really is, I think, probably one of the best examples of how to do a narration right. There are several scenes in this movie where it is just utilized to such a great effect, like when all the Droogs are walking outside of that river or lake or whatever it is. And Alex has this feeling that some of the other members are trying to, in a way, overtake him as the leader of the group, of the gang, and he doesn't like that, so he just, like, you all know the scene. That whole scene really is just so well put together with the narration, with him sort of explaining the situation and like what he's about to do, and as well as the score that's being played. And the slow motion of the scene makes it really funny as well. This movie is also very funny. You know, definitely more of a dark comedy than just a traditional comedy. My personal favorite joke in this entire movie is when Alex is in the hospital near the very end of the movie. And there's this sort of call and response with him moaning out of pain, and then we also hear this woman moaning not out of pain. If you know the scene, you know it. I'll just leave it there. So yeah, I mean, A Clockwork Orange is a movie that I've pretty much loved ever since I first watched it. Unlike some of Kubrick's other films, this one I really just got attached to right from the get-go, right from the first time I viewed it. Every time I watch it, it's such an immersive experience for me. Like when I rewatched it before doing this review, it was about 12 o'clock p.m. when I started it, and I thought like, okay, I'll watch a little bit first and then I'll go and make a sandwich or something, get something to eat, you know? It was literally over an hour before I stood up from my couch to go and get something to eat. That's how good this movie is at keeping your attention, or keeping my attention at least. My only real nitpick with the movie is that it does kind of slow down in a couple of moments in the second act. The second act is still great, but it is definitely my least favorite out of the three acts. There are a couple moments where I feel like the pace could just pick up a little bit, like the scene when he's in the library and he's like picturing himself being the character in the book that he's reading. Some moments like that I do think just kind of put the movie to a halt a little bit. It doesn't get boring, but it does certainly feel a little bit slower than other moments in the movie. But I think that this movie has really held up very well. I mean, it's 50 years old now, which is crazy. I think Kubrick really just created such a compelling world and such compelling characters with this movie. I have no idea how this compares to the book, if it's similar, if it is faithful at all to that original story, but I thought what Kubrick did with this movie was pretty brilliant, and I'm going to give A Clockwork Orange an A. And of course there's my rating system if anyone is curious about that. I will warn you though, for anyone who hasn't seen this, although I don't know why you watched this review if you haven't seen it, especially since I said there might be spoilers. But if you haven't seen this movie, I will just warn you that it is pretty disturbing at parts. Like I said, there is depiction of violence and sexual assaults, and it can be a little hard to watch at a couple moments. So I'll just warn you if you're sensitive to seeing that kind of stuff in movies. But yeah, I personally love this movie every time I watch it. Let me know what you guys think if you have seen this. Also, let me know what your favorite Stanley Kubrick movie is. My personal favorite would be The Shining, but what's yours? With that said, I'm gonna end the video here. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all later. Peace out.